Hello and welcome to the ERwin Data Modeler R8 technical video series. This is SQL Server 2008 new features. Support for SQL Server 2008 includes filtered indexes and sparse columns, change data capture and change tracking, new data types including geography and geometry, and property editors to manage the settings for the new physical objects. New physical objects were added to support SQL Server 2008. They include cryptographic providers, database audit specifications, database encryption keys, full-text stop lists, resource pools, server audits and server audit specifications, spatial indexes, and workload groups. Property editors for all SQL Server physical objects are accessed from the Model menu. The Change Data Capture object provides the specifications for capturing changes to data stored in a table. A table can have up to 2 specifications for data capture. In ERwin, you work with the Change Data Capture features in the Change Data Capture Editor, the Database Editor, and the Table Editor. The Database Audit Specification object collects a single instance of server or database level actions and groups of actions to monitor. The editor lets you enable the collection of records of database actions for auditing and lets you select the audit action groups and database audit actions to audit. It also lets you specify the SQL Server principal on which to apply the audit action or audit action group. For each database audit specification, you define the server audit within the grid and the audit action group and database audit action in the General tab. You can click the editor icon to open the Server Audit Editor to work with server audits, or the Database Audit Action Editor to work with database audit actions. Support for full-text stop lists lets you define a list of strings to omit from a full-text index. These strings are common words that do not help in a full-text search. Full-text queries do not search on any strings in a stop list. Stop words define each string in a stop list. Use the full-text stop list editor to define the strings that you want to omit from a full-text index. You can create an entirely new stop list or select an existing stop list to use as the basis for creating a new one. The system stop list exists by default. You can also specify the database principal that owns the stop list, or view where the stop list is used, in addition to providing any comments, user-defined properties, or user notes. Additional security objects were added for SQL Server 2008. These include cryptographic providers and database encryption keys. The Cryptographic Provider Editor lets you define the attributes of an external EKM provider to provide cryptographic functionality. You specify the file and file type of the file that implements the SQL Server Extensible Key Management Interface, in addition to providing any comments, user-defined properties, or user notes. The Database Encryption Key Editor lets you define the encryption key to use for transparently encrypting a database. You specify the database for which the key applies, the encryption algorithm to use, and the name of the encryptor used to encrypt the key, in addition to providing any comments, user-defined properties, or user notes. For ease of use, from within the Database Encryption Key Editor, you can open the Database Editor to work with databases, the Certificate Editor to work with certificates, and the Asymmetric Key Editor to work with asymmetric keys. Server audit support is provided in ERwin so that you can use the audit object to define a single instance of server or database level actions to monitor. The Server Audit Editor is used to define the actions on the server to audit and for whom. You also specify the physical file used to contain the audit data when the server audit type is file. The Server Audit Specification Editor is used to define a SQL Server Audit Specification object using the SQL Server Audit feature. The object defines the actions on the server instance to audit and for whom. ERwin R8 supports spatial indexes, which are indexes on tables based on spatial data in the table using spatial columns. Spatial data uses the new data types, geometry, and geography, support of which is also included. In the Spatial Index Editor, you specify the spatial columns for the index and spatial index properties. You also define tessellation and boundary box options. As you can see here, the spatial column type is set to geographic, so the boundary box options are unavailable. In this example, the spatial column type is set to geometric, so you now have boundary box options available to use. Support is provided for the SQL Server 2008 Resource Governor using new workload group and resource pool objects. With this support, you can define resource limits and priorities for different workloads and have consistent performance. Use the Workload Group Editor to create a workload group and associate the workload group with a resource pool and to define the resource policies for session requests. A workload group allows the aggregate monitoring of resource consumption and the application of a uniform policy to all of the requests in the group. Resource pool objects are used along with workload group objects to support Resource Governor. With this support, you can define resource limits and priorities for different workloads and have consistent performance. The editor lets you define the physical resource parameters for a virtual resource pool within a SQL Server instance. Specify the parameters for minimum and maximum CPU percentage levels and minimum and maximum memory percentage levels to use for each resource pool. ERwin Data Modeler R8 provides enhanced support for the SQL Server 2008 database. All relational syntax and security objects are supported, along with providing new objects to support auditing and resource management. Support is also included for bracketing of identifiers on Forward Engineer and improved use of alter statements for DDL scripts.